I think it will be discussed later, but I'm going to say that we will have to include likewise the feature of having the scanning of the QR code. We will have to include that because we can remove one item in the TOR so that we can perhaps use that for purposes of the QR code of NAMFREL. We will do that. So what we are saying is that we would like to be as transparent as possible. But may I please invite the attention of everyone. There are certain issues outside of the automated election system that must be addressed quickly, not only by the Commission, but practically everyone. And these are issues outside of the machines. These are irregularities outside of the machines which can greatly affect the results of the election, such as vote buying, such as massive manipulation of the results by people who are not actually voters, who are the ones voting on election day. Before, when I was a practitioner, I called that, especially during the manual election, I used to call that written by one ballot, WBO ballots. Now I'm calling that shabu, shaded by one person ballot. Because there are certain areas in our country, regardless of how we try to manage, of how we include the PNP and the AP and the Coast Guard to keep the peace in these places. There are certain places whereby the voters were not the ones voting on election day, but these ballots are being shaded by individuals who are individuals or in cohorts with politicians. And at the same time, kindly please help the Commission on Election to push before the Executive and Congress for the budget in relation to the change of the system and the machines that we are looking for 2025. Take note, the Commission on Election already declared the 97,000 machines as unusable, meaning we will no longer use these machines, meaning that we are going to change the system, we are going to change the machine, and therefore we will be needing the budget. We will be needing the budget not only for the automated software and the hardware, but likewise we'll be needing the budget for the transmission of the results. And we likewise have to understand that aside from the components of the automated election system, you still have to spend for the honoraria of our electoral board members. For the coming 2025 election, we are estimating 71 million Filipino voters will be voting. An increase in the number of voters would mean an increase in the number of machines, an increase in the number of precincts, an increase in the number of ballots, and an increase of practically everything, all election paraphernalia to be used for the election, and therefore an increase in the number of electoral board members, more or less 1,100,000. Come to think of it and compute that using only as basis the 10,000, 9,000, and 8,000 we are paying or giving the electoral board members on election day. So that if, in case we are going to change the system, we will have to train them anew. We will have to do a massive information dissemination all around the country, and that will cost a lot. And you are going to make an additional honoraria, give additional honoraria for our teachers. Even a 2,000 pesos across the board increase, that will cost a lot. Try to imagine, even for the sake of argument, that you are to include one poll workers per every precinct, and you will have 128,000 precincts. Sorry, 128,000 precincts by 2025, clustered precincts at that. You will be needing about 1 billion pesos for just one poll worker per precinct. So we are facing a huge problem of budget. Sir Lito, when I was attending the Participate Summit last week, mentioned that's the problem of all government agencies, budget, of course. But the COMELEC's predicament is a different one. Take note that we are going to ask Congress for a budget which is separate and distinct from the regular budget of the Commission and Election, which we are willing to sacrifice. We are going to ask for a separate, independent, special budget for the election. And for us Filipinos, nagmamahal na po ang demokrasya ng ating bansa. To conduct the election barangay and SK manually, we needed 12 billion pesos. To conduct the automated election, I want you to guess how much the COMELEC will be asking Congress. But then, everything can be said and can be done, but again, we need your support. We need your assistance. You have to help the Commission election realize a 2025 change of system that will be used, perhaps, for the 2026 barangay and automated election. We wanted to automate the barangay and SK election of 2026. We cannot go back to manual. 3 or 4 hours of delay in the proclamation of candidates, or even 6 hours because of a manual system of election, will mean violence, will mean disruption. And not unlike in an automated election, it resulted to only 23 election-related violence. So we have to expedite the entire process, and we can only do that using an automated system. And so whatever is the system that the COMELEC will be using by 2025, it will be used by 2026, and it will likewise be used by 2028. We cannot have a new system by 2028. It's a very dangerous It's a very dangerous problem on the part of the Commission election, because changing the system in a presidential and vice presidential election will also be dangerous on the part of the country. So we would like to change the system that is upgradable, that is so modern, and anybody here and nobody here present right now can tell before the Commission election that the TOR was tailor-fit to suit a particular supplier or provider. All the features included in our wish list were actually the product of our experience, the product of what our stakeholders had been telling the Commission: include these things, include this feature. We decided to include everything and find out if there is a supplier or even a manufacturer. We wanted a manufacturer, not a mere integrator, to supply to the Commission election this kind of machine. And luckily for the COMELEC, there were 3 suppliers, perhaps even 5 or more, that will be supplying these machines. We wanted to ensure and assure everyone here present that it will be a fair, a very transparent procurement process. And before I forget, there is also that problem of procurement, because our present law says so long as the supplier is able to comply with the terms of reference and is responsive, so pababaan na lang po ng presyo. So yun ang malaking problema. And there is this problem of single largest completed contract. And there is this problem under 9369 of the provision which says of an international national election experience. So there are several things that should be changed in our present law on automation. The COMELEC cannot do it by itself, because the COMELEC may be accused of legislation, and which we cannot do. We cannot do legislation. We can only implement and enforce the provision of a law. And so, expect that your commission will be defending our budget for this year, for next year, and of course, for 2025. Para po sa kaalaman ng lahat, mas magastos po ang preparatory year kaysa yung election year. It's more expensive the year before the conduct of the election. So please help us, support us, and likewise let us support the amendment of certain laws, especially laws on the conduct of the election. And take note, when the commission, the entire commission election, more or less participated in the Participate Summit last week, we directed all our senior staff to be there, and we had been listening, especially the comments and the suggestions and recommendations of NAMFREL. This representation was full aware of what you are asking us, and surely we will listen to you, and we will include that in our decision making. In all, I would like to tell you that this is a blessed day You are here right now. You would like to listen to the commission election, and the commission election would likewise want to listen to all of you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, COMELEC Chairman Garcia, for candidly sharing with us the circumstances that surrounded the conduct of the May 2022 elections, which were managed according to the chairman under Jurassic election laws. He also mentioned that the TORs for the first time were made public, that the results were made known to the key stakeholders in the election process, and there were also measures made to enable verification of ballots that were read by the counting machines. However, he also pointed out to other issues that were beyond the AES, and that also impedes the conduct of clean and honest and fair elections. Hopefully, Project Participate, represented here by our good friend, Chief of Party Julio Tihanki, and NAMFREL would be willing to help COMELEC as we look to the BARM in its establishment of the appropriate election office, because they just passed the BARM electoral code. Now, Chair Garcia mentioned the need for transparency, which is essential in electoral processes because it eliminates the appearance of impropriety and limits the possibility of electoral fraud. Transparent procedures were made available during the May 2022 elections, which promoted public confidence and trust in the electoral system. Now, within this framework, this forum revisits the current AES system, and to shed further light into the AES system and what happened from a technical point of view, because Chair Garcia presented us with the substantive law and the legislative revisions that would be required to make it more effective. Our next speaker is someone whom the NAMFREL has been closely working with respect to technology. He is also a member of the Commission on Elections and is currently the commissioner in charge for the COMELEC's Digital Transformation Program. He has more than 42 years of experience in information technology and business management, something that most of us in this room are not competent with respect to technology. I, for one, am an illiterate with respect to technology. But this commissioner, member of the Commission on Elections, is an expert in this area. Prior to his appointment to the COMELEC, he has held key roles in business processing, re-engineering, banking, the academia and media, and including serving as the commissioner of the Presidential Commission on the Y2K compliance. Do you still remember that? Year 2000, and everybody thought the banking system would be disrupted. Well, he was part of that commission. He also served as the executive vice president and the dean of the College of Business at the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. And he's the president of the Philippine Computer Society, the spokesperson for the Automated Election System, Watch, and columnist of the Manila Times. In 2012, he was honored as the most outstanding electronics engineer of the year by the Institute of Electronics Engineers of the Philippines. It is my privilege to call on the Honorable Nelson Celis, Commissioner of the COMELEC, to share with us his perspective.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Kung sinasabi nga ni Chairman Garcia na Jurassic ang batas, si Chairman Garcia po ay millennial. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, Chairman George Garcia, Chairperson Lito Aberia, Professor Carlos Manuel, Mr. Ketua, Doc July, Tihanki of the Participate, the guest, ladies and gentlemen, good morning uli. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. It is an honor to stand before you today as we gather at the National Citizens Movement for Free Elections Stakeholders Forum. This event marks a significant milestone in our collective efforts to explore an alternative automated election system for our beloved nation. First, I would like to extend my utmost gratitude to NAMFREL for being a major force in the success of the first National Election Summit last March 8, 9, and 10 at Sofitel. Your valuable insights and recommendations made it possible for the Commission to move forward with a better vision of the Philippine election systems. NAMFREL was one of the 23 partners of the Commission on Elections in the preparation of the Election Summit, which we started with many participants from different stakeholders. And we started this focus group discussions. We had 53 focus group discussions participated by 23 partners. We started that in September and we ended up in February in preparation for the first National Election Summit, hearing all these recommendations of our partners. Meron tayong, of course, aside from NAMFREL, nandun yung PPCRB, yung Lente, Philippine Computer Society, the CIO Forum, of course, the DICT, the Department of Information and Communications Technology, the Department of Science and Technology, the Academ, the PLM, LaSalle, Ateneo. So that 2023 National Election Summit served as a testament to NAMFREL's commitment to progressing a fair and safe election process. As we reflect on the past, we recognize the challenges. But it is through our collective efforts that we are here today discussing alternative avenues for improving our automated election system. NAMFREL has been at the forefront of the fight for transparent and credible elections in our country for decades, 40 years at that. From its humble beginnings in 1983, it has consistently advocated for the empowerment of our citizens, ensuring that their voices are heard and their voice and votes recognized. Over the years, NAMFREL has played a pivotal role in monitoring our electoral processes, observing and reporting irregularities, and safeguarding the integrity of our democratic system. The persistence displayed by NAMFREL in this journey toward a fair and safe election system is commendable. Despite the challenges and obstacles faced along the way, NAMFREL has remained steadfast in its pursuit of transparency, accountability, and inclusivity. The dedication of its volunteers who tirelessly give their time and expertise is a testament to the organization's commitment to our democratic values. As we explore alternative avenues for automated elections, and as we discussed in the past 53 FGDs, NAMFREL was present in most of the focus group discussions we had. They recommended a lot of improvements, like, for example, implementation of election standards. And NAMFREL was also there during the discussion on the implementing rules and regulations that we don't have as of this moment since the time of the enactment of Republic Act 8436 as amended by RA 9369. So during that time, NAMFREL recommended several recommendations to augment the 9369's provisions by stating so many technical provisions that should be included. And those were also mentioned by our chair in terms of coming out with the terms of reference for the 2025 elections. So we must ensure that our focus remains on the welfare and empowerment of our citizens. Our goal is to develop a system that amplifies the votes of the people, instills confidence in the electoral process, and protects the sanctity of each vote cast. As we move forward, let us remember that the pursuit of a fair and safe election system is not an individual endeavor, but a collective responsibility. It requires the concerted efforts of all stakeholders, including government agencies, civil society organizations, political parties, and most importantly, the citizens themselves. Together we can shape the future of our elections, embracing innovation. And one of the major resolutions of the Commission on Elections, and also based on the several FGDs that we had, is to have an internet voting for the upcoming elections. So we're already finishing the terms of reference for the internet voting for the overseas absentee voting, not yet for the national and local elections. So let us harness the power of technology to enhance our democracy, ensuring that every citizen's voice is heard and that our electoral processes are robust, secure, and fair. In conclusion, I would like to express my profound gratitude to NAMFREL for their exceptional efforts in participating in the first National Election Summit. And hopefully we should have a sequel to this 2023 Election Summit. Their unwavering commitment to the progress and their relentless pursuit of fair and safe elections have set a shining example for us all. Together, let us continue to strive for a future where every citizen can exercise their democratic rights with confidence and pride. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much, and may we continue to strive for a better and brighter democratic future.
Thank you, Commissioner Celis, for revisiting the current automated election system and for urging today's participants to surface issues, identify gaps in implementation, and elicit alternatives that would contribute to a free and fair electoral process, a goal of governments, the electorate, political parties, and non-governmental organizations. Like COMELEC Chairman Garcia, Commissioner Celis underscores the reality that electoral reform requires the unified effort of all stakeholders. Now our next speaker is NAMFREL's own IT guru. For all IT issues, we run to him to probably explain to us in layman's terms what the heck that process involves. Let me share with you some of the key highlights in his extensive career and experience in IT. He served as volunteer for the NAMFREL Pasay City chapter years ago. and joined the national headquarters starting in the 1990s by providing assistance in setting up systems for the Operation Quick Count. Our next speaker started his career in the information and communications technology in 1975 and has served in various capacities in management and technical support. He participated in the drafting of the implementing rules and regulations of RA 8792, or the E-Commerce Act of 2000, and served as a resource person in both houses of Congress in drafting the ICT-related laws, including the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012, the National Privacy Act of 2012, and the creation of the Department of Information and Communications Technology. He also served as a resource person with the Supreme Court Subcommittee on E-Commerce, which drafted the rules on electronic evidence. Ikaw palang may sala. He is a consultant on applications and systems, business community, cybersecurity, data privacy protection, ICT policy development, and he served as the president of the Philippine Computers Emergency Response Team. It is my extreme pleasure and privilege to call on the current chairman of the NAMFREL, Chair Angel Lito Averia.
Salamat ulit, Attorney Salma. So this time around, I'll talk about one specific topic, the automated election system in the eyes of stakeholders. Meron na ba? Okay. So, umpisahan natin dun sa survey that was conducted about a month or 5 weeks after the 2022 national and local elections conducted by Pulse Asia involving 1,200 respondents. And in that survey, the respondents, or 82% of the respondents said that the 2022 national and local election results was accurate. Okay. And many of the respondents said that they have a big trust in the results. 83% of rural respondents and 81% of urban respondents say that the election results are credible. In terms of the benefits, 72% said speed, and 15% ease of voting, and greater credibility by 11% of the respondents. And 89% of the respondents say that they see the continuation of the use of the automated election system in our future elections. But let me take the perspective of the voters, and these are gathered from our observation and monitoring of the elections. Because voters are primarily exposed to the voting machines, right? And throughout the 5 elections, they have improved in understanding and learning the voting system. Okay? And many say that there is ease of voting. Voters have also learned to check their votes on the VVPAT. The VVPAT was first implemented in 2016 following a Supreme Court ruling. So for 3 elections, we have been using the VVPAT, and the voters have learned how to use the VVPAT in verifying if the machine captured their votes. But among also our findings and observations is that voters who use the emergency accessible polling precincts, this includes the senior citizens, PWDs, heavily pregnant women, you know, they expected to use the voting machine when they cast their votes, but they felt they were deprived of using the machines because the system or the process was anyone who voted using the EAPPs had to leave their ballots, you know, with the poll workers in manning the EAPPs, and somebody would run to their precincts to bring their ballot. Or sometimes, at the end of the day, so the election workers at the EAP would just receive the ballots, and then at the end of the day, bring the ballots to the respective voting precincts for batch reading. Okay. Okay. Each and every elections, we observe long lines or queues. And also voting, well, this was mentioned by Chair Garcia earlier, the malfunctioning machines and SD card failures caused inconvenience to the voter. But voters still wanted to cast their votes using the vote counting machines, so they opted to wait. And some in 2022 had to wait for like at least 24 hours to vote because the replacement machines came the following day. Although they had options like leaving the ballot with the electoral board or returning to the polling precinct at a later time, the options was not acceptable to the voters. And voters said that their experience cannot be and should not be trivialized by saying that they had the options. So because they still wanted to vote using the voting machines. And also, some wondered why results were already coming out when they have not yet cast their votes. For the overseas voters, it has been inconvenient for them. And they can't leave their workplaces on election day. Like, for example, in the Middle East, even if we had voting machines or voting was enabled in our consulates or embassies in the Middle East, their workplaces were actually far from the consulates or embassies, and they would have to travel like a day just to vote. And then, of course, the maritime workers have no opportunity to vote. So I understand that recently COMELEC announced that they will be using internet voting for overseas workers. In the eyes of the electoral boards and other election workers, despite the long hours, because the electoral boards start early, some of them get up at around midnight to go to the treasurer's office to get some of the materials, the election paraphernalia. And then, of course, they have to work all day and they end up late. The electoral boards appreciate the EES as they no longer have to work for extended hours. Even still, they start early, but they end up earlier. They close their processes, post the voting processes earlier. And they appreciate the speed of the vote count because they do not have to go through the painstaking process of recording and counting the votes following the close of polls. Electoral boards no longer have to worry about being intimidated and harassed. They're no longer exposed to electoral violence or at least the exposure to electoral violence have been minimized. But the electoral boards wish for a better system or process when they return the election paraphernalia. No, this is an observation that we've made even in the barangay elections or the plebiscites, because the electoral boards would have to return the election paraphernalia to the municipal treasurer's or city treasurer's office, and they have very little space. Okay. Okay. And of course, ito yung issue nila, sana exempted na daw from taxes yung kanilang election day pay. I personally talked to some of the electoral boards and they've been repeating this, this wish. From the point of view of candidates or political parties, yung win for sale. In other words, some third party would approach candidates selling the win in the elections. And that depends on the level, from the municipal to provincial to the House of Representatives and the Senate, and during presidential elections. It's a win for sale. Some candidates feel that the AES has been rigged to favor certain candidates and would like to see a return to the transparency of vote counting. And some of them support the hybrid election system. For election monitoring organizations, in the eyes of the election monitoring organizations, some electoral boards or boards of canvassers are not aware of the citizen arms accreditation, so they are barred from observing the process. This is in particular our experience in the field. Some EBs not aware that accredited citizens arm are entitled to get a copy of the election returns. And of course, we can observe only the process and not the counting of votes or the consolidation of the election results. Election monitoring organizations, of course, now follow the international standards on election observation. There's, through the years that have been developed, the set of international standards on election monitoring and observation. And EMOs try to see whether election bodies adhere to election laws of the country. With the AES, there is a concern that election laws are not being followed, or parts of the law are not being followed. In the eyes of the COMELEC, and this is actually gathered from my discussions with present and past commissioners, say the transparency of the AES is addressed by a number of transparency measures, including, for example, the local source code review, the tests that are being conducted, the mock elections. There's some of the transparency measures. But of course, transparency measures are not equivalent, or that it does not equate to transparency. Accuracy of the election results is validated by the high accuracy rating from the RMA. In 2022, it was 99.95. But the established standards based on the request for a proposal for the 2010 elections established that standard at 99.995%. That 99.995% has never been met in the last 5 national and local elections. Again, AES performance is satisfactory due to the speed of the election results and aggregation of the results. COMELEC says that there have been less protests filed and there have been no successful protests. Okay. This is perhaps because the protestants do not know where to look for the evidence. Mind you, the evidence is electronic in nature. Okay? And we've been asking for COMELEC to release, for example, the election logs. I do have a case study where it was the operations of the machine. It's not the direct manipulation of the votes. It happened in one of the municipalities